morning, Central Texas. Welcome to Kids Community Connections, where we bring the community to you and you to the community. I'm Phyllis Jones, your host this morning. And, this week, past few days, hasn't been happy days. It's fact, we've had to wake up and look at the news to find out what's going on. Excuse me. And when we found out what was going on, we went into deep shock because a lot of us kind of had to understand and take it in, and by the time you got to take it in, something else happened. So we've never had a chance to actually digress and go, okay, so what's really going on here? We've had a lot of questions, and we've asked each other questions, but we don't know the answer, so we just asking actually ourselves and opinions, and we're going off the news, which we know really we shouldn't trust all they say because they're just as hyped as we are. And they're searching for stories. But nonetheless, we woke up looking at your Facebook posts in the morning. You got to find out what's going on. We've had actually started out one shooting, then two, and then we get a rapid part of shooting. And it's been rolling on this whole week. So, I went to an event a couple of months ago, and it was a man that was speaking. And if anybody knows me, I'll ask anybody anything. I just will, because I think that's the only way you find out the information. Well, I had a pamphlet from the Black Police Officers Association, and it was telling you what to do if you get stopped by the police. But it was a pamphlet, and it was like 4 pages. Well, if I get stopped, I can't tell him, hey, wait, excuse me, officer, let me read this book, because he's gonna think I really lost my mind. So I passed it to this man that I'm going to introduce. He looked at it and he said, some of it, no, and it can be downsized. So I was like, yes, okay, good, because we got to get information out there, because a lot of things that happen, I'm not saying they're our fault, but certain things, sometimes something happens, we freeze up and don't know what to do. We really do. All of us do. You look in the mirror and you see the cop coming towards you and you have no clue what's going to happen, what's going to go. So we do need something that we can rapidly look at just to remind us, keep calm, and this is what we're going to do. So before I let you know who my guest, his name is, I'm going to go over a little bit of his bio, because if I read his whole bio, the show would be over and we would have to do the same show next week after we get finished reading it. So first I'll say his name is James Debrow III, United States Army federal veteran from the Vietnam War, and he served in Korea. And it goes on and on, because he was in the Army quite a long time here. But he also, James is an active academic and independent researcher in the following areas of study: science of management, criminal justice, psychology, and forensic psychology. Other research areas are clinical and forensic investigation, hypnosis, ooh, that's scary. And he has traveled throughout the area in his career, attending the following colleges: University of Metropolitan Community College of Los Angeles, St. Philip's College in San Antonio, Austin Community College, Hill College, Tarleton State University, University of Virginia, Colorado. Oh my gosh, he went everywhere. But also he is a law enforcement officer, and right now he's serving as our law enforcement analyst. So you know what? If CNN can have one, we can too. So I would like to say good morning to Mr. James Debrow. How are you?
Good morning, Ms. Jones.
And I'm glad that you came on this morning, because you can help us unravel our brains, kind of get some questions about what's going on, what happened for these past, I wanted to say 3 days, because now it's 4 days, but what's going on, and we're not understanding police. So the first question I'm going to ask you is this. Years ago, and it's not that many years, but years ago, when someone called the police about somebody, the police would come up and ask you, who are you? What's going on? And if you said I'm selling movies in front of the store, they will go in and ask the store owner, hey, is this man supposed to be selling movies or videos in front of your store? You'd say yes, and they get in their car and go. So when did the law or the rules for the police change where now they can just walk up, slam you in the ground, tell you not to get up, even though you're laying down, tell you to still lay down, and you're still laying down, and then all of a sudden, you're getting shot. So when did the rules for policemen change in the time, or are they not following what policing is all about?
Ms. Jones, there are two statements I'd like to say before I answer that question, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
And the two things that I want to say have to deal with leadership.
Okay.
And so I want to speak to leadership in whatever position it may be. But I want to cite something. Approximately 15 years ago, I was at a Control the Violence conference where I was speaking. What I did not know, that the colonel of the Texas Department of Public Safety was also speaking, who was my boss. But he said something to me 15 years ago, and I'd like to repeat it. And this is what I've called, as I've begun to think about it, that he said something evolutionary to me that I think is applicable to the here and now. And that is what I think should be the law enforcement mentality. And I think it coincides with our oath of office that says we are to uphold the Constitution, the state laws, local laws. But he said this because that was violence like it is today, and I believe a police officer had been killed. And I was upset like most other law enforcement were. But I wasn't in the leadership mind. And so that's what I want to give today. Because the colonel said these words to me that I did not appreciate at the time. He said, James, do you see what's going on? Are you listening to law enforcement? Do you hear and see how they feel when a law enforcement officer has been gunned down and killed? I said, yes, sir. He also said, do you see how hard that they seek out who committed the crime? I said, yes, sir. He said, what I want you to know is that's the way law enforcement is supposed to feel when a private citizen is killed.
Okay.
Those same efforts that you bring to bear for your law enforcement officers, you should most certainly bring those things to bear for the people that you said you are serving. So let me say that. The second thing I want to say, and this is still the leadership, and I get to your question. Please forgive me.
Oh, no, we need to know.
Because there are going to be detractors out there, people who are going to be speaking and using incendiary language. And I just want to be what I tell most people to be that know me, is that, and I used to say this, between a conversation of two people, that need to be at least one intelligent person in the conversation. And I would always say, let that be you. So I promise that I want to make sure that that's me. There's one historical problem that's occurring in the United States that I think that must be stopped as well. And that is attacking black people who stand up for black people. Anytime a group of citizens have to stand up for themselves, leadership has failed them. Two great things that I want to remind leadership of today. to answer your question. The question was, has anything changed in the way police officers conduct their jobs, how they go to the scene, how they investigate certain matters? So you gave a scenario. And if you don't mind, I'm asking you to repeat it so the listeners can hear it again.
Sure.
And then I will respond.
Sure. Years ago, if someone called the police about somebody in front of a building or doing whatever, the police will come out and first ask you, what are you doing? And identify yourself. And if you said you're selling videos and the man decided no, the police would then take you in there. Y'all going together, and they're going to ask them, is he allowed to sell videos in front of your store? If he says yes, then they go on their way because the issue at hand had been solved. So when did it change? When did the rules change for police officers to now just accept a phone call that you have a gun and automatically come tackle you, call you names, such as the F word and above the other names, call you names, put you on the ground, and then tell you to be on the ground, and you're already there. And then after that, when I say when that energy and that hyperness gets into your system, they shoot you. So did the rules change for policing? Because I thought it was supposed to be community policing, and that's not community policing, that's plantation policing. So did it change?
No, law enforcement, any changes that have occurred in the laws are handled in training. So there have been some issues. You've said a lot. So let me bag up and say how things unfold to the police. In the event that a caller calls in something to 911, 911 takes that information and transmit that information to the police department, to a police dispatch. That police dispatch then feeds that information to the responding officers. Now, the law enforcement officer's job that received that information are supposed to take that information and utilize it to, one, try to formulate a plan, and then two, assess how they're going to handle a situation once they get there. Now, the gravity of the offense is very, very important. So let's go back to the CD issue.
Right.
If you've got a person there, the call is that they're selling CDs. Well, that's a low-level offense. So some of the questions and things that are experienced today that I think the people are asking, how is it that a police officer can go to a scene where the crime is very minimal? Like you had somebody selling cigarettes, you had somebody selling CDs, and so that's where the disconnect is. Then your question would be, back to your original scenario with the CDs, why couldn't the officers have gone in and asked the private store owner, did you give this citizen a right to sell CDs? They go in there, they find out that that's true. Well, that's one matter that's put to rest.
Right.
The other issue in that was this citizen was supposedly had brandished a weapon. So that's something they have to deal with. But there's a way to do it. There are procedures, there are tactical ways to handle this, and so that's why these things come into question. But an officer can only deal with the facts and the circumstances that's presented to them. In other words, because we're looking at what we call follow-up investigations. Follow-up investigations occur after some, say if somebody even committed suicide, or some officer had to use force where a person was killed, then you see those follow-up and they go back and dig into their files, and you come to find out that this person had this and they had that. All that's good information, but that's relevant. That's irrelevant because those set of circumstances wasn't presented to the officer. The fact that this person had a criminal record, so what? It's like an officer failing to take a complaint from a prostitute that says, hey, I've been raped. Can a prostitute report rape? So those are some of the issues.
Okay, so since we are talking about the guy from in Louisiana, it looked like a situation all went bad, terribly bad, and police officers lately have been using the word that the person was, they were uncomfortable. The person was opposing the threat because he was African American. So how many times can a police officer say, I feel threatened by an African American, and still stay on the police force? Because that ends up being an issue. If he's feeling threatened by African Americans and they end up being shot, then how long can that officer utilize that same point and stay a police officer? Because now he's saying that he has a problem. To me, he's saying he has a problem, but he gets to go back on the streets after a few days or a few weeks or whatever.
Well, let me say that first of all, the occupation of law enforcement inherently has its dangers.
Right.
Every police officer knows that every day they leave the house, there's a good chance that they won't return. Mm-hmm. You sign up for that.
Yeah.
Now, let's deal with the problem that I think that's looming today is about racism. Mm-hmm. Different treatment. I've been in law enforcement a total of 35.5 years. So if I'm asked a question, is there racism in law enforcement? Well, that answer would be yes. So, but every citizen, no matter what your beliefs are as a police officer, have constitutional rights. And there's no place for any individual to be in the capacity of law enforcement that have biases against any group, and you can't contain that, then I will tell you that you're in the wrong profession. Because
it's if they're supposed to be, like I said, police officers, I'm not understanding I feel threatened. Because if we say we feel threatened when they come up, we're wrong. We're wrong. And if we resist, it's not because sometimes you're resisting, it's because you're not doing anything wrong, so you're confused at this point. And when is it okay for a police officer to use negative words or to tell you to shut up?
Okay. That's a very, very good question. So here's where I think law enforcement can improve, and the leadership in law enforcement, is that anytime a police officer deviates from their training, they have to have articulable facts and reasons for that deviation. Let me just start with, let's start with a traffic stop. In Texas, there's something called a 7-step violated contact. And these things can be retrieved from a website from the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement. There's a course called the Texas Basic Police Officers Course. Now, in that training, and I bought a copy of that with me, it's under Unit 24.5.1. And what this says is to identify the 7-step violated contact method. Now, these are 7 things that I think are very, very professional. Let me make a point here. Let me just cover them real quickly.
Okay.
And then you can answer the question, is this occurring?
Right.
Because this is what should be used first.
Okay.
Now, the number one says greeting, identify yourself. How professional is that?
That should be first.
That's human.
Yes.
You mean that's a human basic quality that every person deserves. Hi, my name is James Debrow. I'm a member of the Texas Department of Public Safety. Number two is statement of the violation. Tell them what they did. Number three would be identify the driver, check the conditions of the vehicle. Number four would be statement of the action be taken. 5, take that action. 6, explain what the violator must do. And then number 7, leave. Now, in that training, this block of training that every Texas police officer is given, there's no place in there that says you can tell somebody to shut up.
Or curse at them.
In fact, as a trainer, I trained many people, over 22,000 people just myself. I've been a trainer for over 20 years. If you were to ask any police officer, are you taught to use profanity to a citizen? Well, I can tell you what that answer is. That answer is no. Are you taught to tell a private citizen to shut up? I can tell you that's no. Because every person has a right to speak under the First Amendment. So anytime you got a police officer that's deviating from their basic training, that's always going to be a potential problem. And that's where I think law enforcement leadership can come in to reiterate the basic things that they were taught and get back into the legal framework and stay in that and do not operate outside of that. I think we will have less citizens being shot and killed by law enforcement.
So what is it called when policemen, instead of being policemen, they start acting like your boss, or your like or like you need to go into refocus or time out? You know,
that's another very good. I try not to look at the series called Cops. I try not to look at that kind of stuff, because that's a reminder of to me of bad policing and police officers that need training. And also, let me say, as a trainer, is that training doesn't fix everything.
Correct.
But I have seen and witnessed in my position where I've seen police officers attempt to be people's parent and telling them how they should even respond to them by yes sir and no sir. None of that's in your training. I believe if a police officer conduct themselves giving respect, they'll get it in return. And so there again, over and over, if you look at most of these kinds of situations, you're going to see a deviation away from training and the legal frameworks of the Constitution and of the state laws that is running rampant in law enforcement. And that's where leadership comes in. Because if you don't correct these little bitty things right here, then these big things like we see today are out of control. In the Texas Department of Public Safety, supervisors, and it's in policy to pull several videos and traffic stops from their officers and evaluate that and visit with those officers. And I guarantee you, if you have them deviating from the very, very small things, you can guarantee they're deviating from the big things.
Correct. Okay, next question. We're going to go to Minnesota.
Minnesota.
Yes. All right. So tell me where everything was right. Okay. Supposedly they pulled somebody over for a tail light. Okay. The guy informs the police officer that I have a concealed gun license, and the officer and I have a gun. So the officer says, get your license and everything. When he tells him that's what I'm reaching for, and unfortunately most men carry their wallets in their pocket, so you have to reach for it. When does it become okay to shoot you because I think you're going for your gun? When I asked you to give me your ID and you told me what you have, so we've had a positive exchange right there. It was a positive exchange of, this is what I need you to do. And when he said, officer, I'm reaching to get it, when did it become okay to shoot him? Because you were certainly afraid that he was going to pull out a gun. And also, when did it become okay for you're laying there bleeding? No one calls 911, but the other officers come to console the officer who shot somebody. So the focus became, let's console our brother, our fellow officer, and meanwhile he's sitting in the car, being shot and dying.
Ms. Jones.
Yes.
You have a way of asking many questions, all wrapped into one. But as a use of force expert, let me say and answer this by saying that, one, I'm not investigating that.
Right.
I haven't looked at all of the facts and the circumstances, but I will share with the listening audience a formula that the investigators should use to determine whether this person used justifiable force.
Right.
And the mathematical formula is subject actions plus the circumstances will determine the force option that a police officer uses. Let me back up and say that again. The formula that's used to determine justification, not justification, exoneration, not, would be subject actions. So you look at what the subject did in this particular case.
Right.
Well, this subject was in his vehicle. There was an exchange between the law enforcement officer and the private citizen, where the citizen advised the officer that he was a concealed handgun holder. Even in Texas, when that occurred, there's a process that law enforcement officers are taught. And let me just say that in most states, there are more states with a legal right to carry. So this is going to be an issue for law enforcement to have to deal with. And now, especially in Texas, we have open carry.
Open carry.
And so, how are we going to deal with that? Now, back to the traffic stop. Now, what were the circumstances?
He got stopped for a tail light.
So you look at all of that now, because those things have to be looked at and evaluated, because that gives to the degree of the severity of the offense. What was that?
But he wasn't driving. That's the other part.
Yeah. So I mean,
she was driving.
Yeah. There's just so many issues.
Right. But the problem really is the point of, if I tell an officer, even in Texas, that I have a concealed handgun license, and like I say, I have a gun, if you tell me to show you my license, I've got to reach somewhere for it. It's not around my neck.
Yes.
It's not, sitting on my dashboard. It's in my wallet, or female, it's in a purse. So you've got to reach for it, because there's no other way to give it to him. So when is this supposed to be a point of calmness or whatever? Or you told me to reach for it and I'm reaching for it. I'm doing what you said, yet you shoot me because you're afraid. You're afraid. Somewhere in there, there's got to be a point of responsibility, of being smart, or having something, because that's going to happen a whole lot. If it happened then and we have open carry in Texas, that's going to happen again somewhere. So at that point, what happens?
You've asked me, as a lot of these kinds of things that are occurring today that we see in video, there are already case laws and situations where those things have occurred.
Right.
Let me say something to my law enforcement people. Mm-hmm. There's a theory out there that's called the could have been theory. The could have been theory, I think you can find under Slatery versus Rizzo, or Rizzo versus Slatery. These are things that just come into mind right now. Now, these life and death situations can happen very, very quickly. And so police officers have to make what they call split-second decisions. Now, those split-second decisions are made, and the courts have already said one thing that you can't use and apply is what they call 20/20 hindsight. Because everybody can look at something and use 20/20 hindsight. Mm-hmm. So that's the first thing that's out there. So could the officer have thought that he was going for a weapon? That's probably going to be yes, because it's from his perspective. Now I would go back to training and tactics. Are you positioned tactically where if this person has a gun, are you where you can respond? Now, to be in front of the passenger door, we're taught that that's called F6. F6 stands for fatal zone. For any officer to walk up and put themselves right there in front of any citizen, black, white, orange, it doesn't matter. That's the fatal zone.
Yeah.
So you can't respond tactically or whatever you need to do. So there are a lot of issues. I will be waiting and looking at how this one unfolds, just as any person in my position and any agency should be listening and watching how this is going to unfold. But we've got to get back to our basic training. We've got to get back to better tactics. And we have to stop and say we are living in a world where all citizens have guns, not just black people, not just white people, not just Hispanics. Everybody's probably got one. Some's going to have them legal, some's going to have them illegal. So how are you going to deal with it?
That's true.
But one thing you can't do is say, let me get your license. I asked you for it. And then next thing you know, you shoot me for what you asked me to do. It appears that way.
Right.
So there are many dynamics. So you can ask me a question about that particular scenario, and every time you change something in that, that's going to change my answer.
Okay.
So the good news is it is going to be investigated.
Good.
I just hope that it's somebody with experience, not just because you're an investigator, but someone that has been a trainer and investigator that know police tactics, know police training, because you have to look at the totality of the circumstances.
Okay. We're going to take a break and come right back, because I want to know about this robot bomb thing. Welcome to the second half of Kids Community Connections, where we bring the community to you and you to the community. And we're still talking to Mr. James Debrow. But what we want to know now is, in Dallas, all of a sudden we hear that we know they have robots. We know police departments have robots and they use them. But, we were always told that the robots were used when they think it's a bomb. They take the robot takes the bomb out and does what it does with it. We never knew that they would use a robot to actually kill somebody. So when did that begin?
Let me answer that. Secondly, let me say something.
Okay.
About Chief Brown, real quickly, if you don't mind.
Okay.
And about being in the number one position, which is a very, very hard job. One thing that I can tell you about being a chief of police is when things are going good, you generally don't hear anything.
Right.
When things go bad, that's when you usually hear. You hear about those things. And for a chief of police, what he's dealing with is crisis to crisis. That is one of the most stressful jobs in law enforcement, because every day a crisis is coming. It's not when it's coming, it's coming. So I've listened to him, I've watched him, I've seen some of the photographs, and he's in pain. And so I want him to know that I know what he feels. He made a decision.
Mm-hmm.
And we all have to live with a decision that we made. He's the number one person. It's his duty to make a decision. So let's talk about the decision that I know. One, you've already asked me. Mm-hmm. You're not the first person to ask me. And the question is, when did law enforcement start using a bomb robot to carry a bomb to detonate on a suspect? This is the very, very first time.
Wow.
That I've heard that. Now, I think the question is going to be to the people mm-hmm. and everybody else, is this acceptable? There's a academic term that's used in academia that says something like this: the evolving standards of society. Society is always evolving, it's always learning. And as we learn, there are certain things we don't allow anymore. Like in 1936, there was a suspect with the last name of Brown that they beat him to every inch of his life to get a confession out. So in 2016, and as we've evolved, that's no longer appropriate, nor will the people tolerate it. You can't beat confessions out. So that's what I mean, evolving standards. So where are we now in 2016?
A robot.
Yeah, that was, and I was told it was C4, and I'm not going to prosecute him. I'm not going to adjudicate it. He made a decision. The decision was to stop the deadly assault and whatever options they explored. I'm sure he had a team there. He's got a SWAT team commander. Mm-hmm. Everybody's talking. And then the decision is given to him. He has to make it. It's almost similar to President Obama making the decision to go after Osama.
Right.
All the data is given to whoever that head is, and you've got to make a decision.
Right.
The president made one. Chief Brown made one.
Yes, he did. Okay, now, to get off the police officers and into the public, what should we be asking and talking to our police chiefs, and what should we be talking about to them when people are concerned with everything happening everywhere else, when people now become concerned about things happening here in their city? So if you have a conversation with your chief of police, what can we ask and what should we be asking?
Well, I would ask the heads of the agencies, first, do you believe that there's a racial problem in America? Do you believe that there's a racial problem in law enforcement? If they answer that question, each one of those with no, then you know exactly where you are with that particular person, because
he's a problem.
There's one principle of science. It's called observation. One of the principles, we use observation. Well, I think observationally we can see that there's a problem. I don't need you to agree with me. So the question would be, what are you actively doing? How can we work this out? Are your officers following their training that they're being taught in their basic police officers program? Are they following the 7-step violator contact? Because this keeps it professional.
Right.
Are they operating inside of the legal framework of their oath of office? That's what I think needs to occur. And I think another question I would ask him, are your supervisors supervising your police officers? How many videos do your police officers, your supervisors, your direct reports view the video footage of their officers? One, is that occurring? Then secondly, if it is, are they sitting down with those officers and critiquing that entire performance? Because that's what should occur. Right. Because the job is to improve the employee. And secondly, in state of Texas, there's a course called the new supervisors course 3737 that says the duty of the supervisors is to protect their subordinates. Right. And their citizens. So if you got a reckless, hot-headed subordinate, and your correction should be corrective action, documenting it, handling it, because they are going to do something improper to your citizens. The people are first. They're not second. Your officers are second to the chief of police. You work for the people. Your oath of office says that you work for the people. So we've got to get back to the basics. So those are the kind of questions that I would ask them. What are you doing? And look at it. Don't just tell me, I want to see it.
Right.
Ask their officers, sir, do your supervisors look at your video footage? Because I see it every day on cops. Traffic stops, they walk up to a person and says, do you know why I stopped you? Well, that's inappropriate.
That's true, because if you say no, what? I mean, you can say no.
Then the next question is, what are you doing on this side of town? Excuse me?
Yeah.
I'm a United States citizen. I can be anywhere I want to. I'm free to walk around and not be subjected to anything other than what you really are, a United States citizen. So there are a lot of questions, and it's time for the leadership to sit down and talk with the people. You cannot deny this. You've got to, they have to stop saying or making the citizens feel like you care more about the police officer.
Right.
Somebody sent me a copy of the Dallas paper yesterday. I got it today on my way coming here today, and it says the community is hurting. Now, what does that mean?
Right.
So they're hurting because the police officers were killed.
Mm-hmm.
So then the citizens will say, why didn't you come up with this title when the citizens are being killed?
Right.
We're hurting. So what did that message give? So all of this incendiary language that's being used out there is not helping it.
No.
But there's some ownership on law enforcement first. And as a member of law enforcement, I'm saying we need to look at ourselves first.
Because Thursday we have a police community forum coming up.
Oh, is that correct?
This Thursday, 6 o'clock at the police department. We have a community forum coming up. And after I Facebooked that you were coming on the show, people asked me to ask you certain questions they need to ask at the police community forum, because the chief leads out the forum. He's there, and some of the officers are there, and some of his admin is there. So everybody wants to go, but me telling them you were coming on made it Phyllis, these 50,000. What should we ask them?
Yeah.
Because people now are more concerned. Before it was, he would talk about the crime in the neighborhood and the not the small stuff, but the things that were going on. But now people want more strategic questions that they need to ask, because, like I said, of what's going on. And hopefully it doesn't happen here. But we've had, in our past 2 months in Killeen, we've had several cops being fired for sexual harassment. So I won't, and that's bad too. That doesn't look good at all, So, but people now are concerned, and they want to go to the forum and actually ask questions where they mean something, rather than saying, the streets on my street is dimly lit. Well, people want now. They say, okay, well, that's small, but now they want to ask more, better questions to get a better understanding, and also to let the police chief know that, to feel the concern.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the things, let me reiterate something I said a minute ago. I'll recap that, but let me just say one of the things I think police officers have to do a better job is calling out cops who are bad.
Right.
We're going to have to do that.
Wow.
We're going to have to, when somebody asks you about an officer's conduct, we're going to have to we'll stop looking like or appearing that we're trying to protect them. The truth is the only way.
Right.
So if you got a bad police officer, you need to call him what he is and do something with him. And let me back up again and reiterate what I said to your community, your constituents that you serve. Because two issues I think that's happening in law enforcement: leadership and then supervision. So the chief of police, he is the head. It starts with him. And your employees are going to reflect you. And I used to say, as head of an agency, is that you're not reflecting me, officer. And anytime my police officers didn't reflect me, I told them. And I told the public. So, but they're gonna, the chiefs of police, colonels, or whatever, any of these heads are gonna have to make sure that they are supervising their people and getting these videos.
That's the most important part.
Getting these traffic stops. If I can tell you this, if they're not looking at a minimum, I'm gonna give you the lowest level of 3 spot checks videos on one of their line personnel, police officers, I can tell you that's problematic.
Oh, okay.
Because you got to rein in anybody that's out there functioning
right
like a rogue cop. A rogue cop is somebody that's out there, a rogue police officer is out there that is using their gun and badge to abuse, to talk down, to curse citizens out, to demean them. That is not law enforcement.
It's terrorist.
So, yeah, I see a lot of what happening today is no supervision. They're gonna have to supervise them.
That's true. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for coming on this morning, and you will be back. So, just remember that. You'll be back.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Because as long as we have issues, we need someone to talk to help us understand what policing is supposed to be. So when we see it not looking like it's supposed to be, we know we need to ask.
And I thank you for giving me an opportunity to come and speak about an occupation that I care a lot about. And that I feel the people need. Mm-hmm. But I also want the law enforcement to know two things. We're public servants, mm-hmm. and we're peacekeepers.
They need to remember that. Well, thank you. So on another note, I have one announcement to give out. ATO Sliders Texas chapter, to which everybody know I dance with them. We're having a pancake breakfast fundraiser for our upcoming conference. It's going to be July 16th at Applebee's. But you can go to the website, which is atltexassliders.com/fundraiser, and find out more about our conference, and come to our breakfast on the 16th and hang out with us, because we're going to have a free dance conference to teach you how to do some of the line dances. And it's a perfect way to meet some new people, burn some energy, and just have some good, clean fun. Just a lot of fun. So check out the website. Come out, eat with us for breakfast. I don't know how I'm going to figure that out and get to the station at the same time, but okay, I think I could do that. I could do that. I'm going to do it. And then dance with us in the afternoon. And like I said, it's good, clean fun, some exercise, meet some new people, get a good workout, because our trainer, Shay, she tries to kill us. She really does. We think that she got our insurance on our heads, because sometimes she, has no niceness for us. She acts like one of these police officers that we have out here that don't care about people. Yeah, she does the same thing to us. But I want to thank, again, Mr. James Debrow for coming on the show this morning and giving us some much-needed education and some direction. Because, as all these things happen, we always know we need someone that we can call and say, hey, I'm not getting this, and when you have somebody that you can call and say, hey, we're not getting this, and will also come on the show. And he drove here, so he doesn't live in Killeen or Harkin Heights, Copper's Cove. He doesn't live around here, but he drove here this morning to deliver a message to us and help us out with some of these things going on. And also, if you have any additional questions, I'm on Facebook, Phyllis Jones, hit me up. And if you have a question that you need answered, I will contact him and get an answer, and I'll get it back out to you. So I want to thank everyone for listening to KISS Community Connections, 103.1 KISS FM. I want you to always remember, you cannot lead a positive life with a negative mind. We'll talk to you next Sunday. Bye now.